I had a little bit of a break. I can't go too long today, so I might have to break this up into two pieces. But my name is Amelie, and you are watching the Soulestic Intelligence podcast, which is right now we're doing a side series on the digital age. And I define the digital age as anything from when the internet started, we started getting personal computers in our home, to now where we're just completely integrated into this technological state. A lot of things are digital, and today's topic is also becoming digital as well. I had started the Digital Age series to do a really deep dive investigation into what is going on. Hi, Mike Kramer. Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the like. I had started the Digital Age series because I saw a trend that was kind of alarming, and I wanted to really just dive into it and figure out, okay, why are people feeling like this? What is the true thing that's going on here? And so I've gone into depths such as transhumanism. I've talked about digital dating. I've talked about this digital identity split that happens when we start plugging in and being avatars in the digital metaverse, so to speak. And even talked about what the metaverse is and how that might translate in our minds. So I really wanted to talk about health and healthcare because we were talking about in the transhumanism portion of this idea of digital immortality. And digital immortality is merging with machines and becoming that machine. And so I wanted to talk about biometrics a little bit, and maybe even some wearable stuff that we've used. So let's just talk about the timeline of biometrics in general, okay? So from ancient times, so ancient civilizations until roughly the 1400s, fingerprints and handprints were being used to, hi, fourth two, hello, Rossi, welcome, welcome. All right. Fingerprints and handprints were used as identity as for markers in Babylonian and in Chinese ancient civilizations. I do not play Roblox, but I play Minecraft. Does that count? I hope you're having a good day. I am. Oh, New Orleans. Nice. And oh, let's go. Um, so that they're using fingerprints, they're using this biometric thing to like identify people, the handprints to identify. And then in 1879, Bertillon introduces anthropometry for criminal IDs. Okay, I don't know how to say that. And then in the 1960s, this idea of early automated fingerprint identification systems starts to get integrated. So that's in the 1960s. That's not too far away from where we are right now. I'm new here, just joined to say hi. Oh yeah, if you guys are here, please throw me a like and subscribe if you can. That would be awesome. Helps the metrics. And today we're talking about the digital age. We're talking healthcare, health, and immortality. As much as I can get in, I'm going to be doing this probably for about another 40 minutes. So from the 70s and 80s, there are wrist-worn heart monitors emerge. So now you can wear it on your wrist, this monitoring system. Those were early models. It's not like having an Apple Watch today, which is another wearable technology that you have. And then in 1994, the first Bluetooth device is launched, and then soon enough, GPS wearables start to appear. And obviously, with technology, something is made, but it's made, clunkily, and then overall, over time, inventors start making it a little bit more efficiently. In the 80s and 90s, while we had some manufacturing, it wasn't like it is today, where we can almost do these instant prototypes of anything and then we can have something that works immediately. And I did talk about the first launch of the smartphone in 2007. So Apple Macintosh is like the first. So Steve Jobs was really ahead of this technological curve by creating the first personal computer that you can buy and bring into your home, and the first smartphone in 2007, before smartphone was a thing. And then even with Siri and Apple Watch, I mean, when we think of these wearable biometric devices, we definitely, Apple Watch is in at the top of the chain here. And then, you know, Siri is also another just early adopter that we associate these AI assistants with, right? And then also during this time frame, Fitbit is launched. So Fitbit is one of the early, before Apple Watch, it's one of the early ones that just does biometric scanning, so health scanning. But with Apple Watch, it took the phone plus all of this other biometric monitoring, and it made it into a wearable device. And we're just talking about the wearable evolution at the moment of biometrics. And then in 2010, like I said, we were talking about the Apple smartwatch. That's when that gets launched. And then you have some like ECG scanning, sleep scanning, stress scanning, aside from just the heart monitoring. Now you can look at, how is my sleep schedule going? How am I breathing? How's my heart doing? Are the electrical circuits working? So you're having this biometric digital scan of your body at all times while you're wearing the wearable smartphone, Apple Watch, or smartwatch. And that was in the 2010s. So, you know, in that period of time from 2010 to 2020, the there's more and more watchmakers. You know what, you guys, I remember back in when I was a kid in the 90s, and my family always had like popular science magazines, and I remember seeing the Apple Watch. Like, they had already designed it and it hadn't even been launched yet. You know, this is back in the 90s, and I think the magazines were probably from the 80s, 90s, somewhere around there. And I remember reading about it when I was a kid. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's fascinating. I mean, I'm probably like all of 6 and 7. But I remember seeing the cover of the magazine with the guy that had his hand, and then there was a watch on it. And it was like, pretty soon you're going to be able to communicate by a watch. Like, you can wear your phone on a phone way to communicate on your arm. And back then it was like very sci-fi. It was very like futuristic. And so seeing that kind of technology was really fascinating, because it was like, it wasn't a part of our world. It was still a very analog world. In fact, no, like, most people still used cash. Using any digital currency wasn't even thought of. Like, nobody would even imagine that that's what we were doing. But, you know, rush up to 2010. Yes, now we're definitely doing that. And then in the 2020s is when that Oro ring, I've seen Oro before. It's like a ring that you can wear that's a wearable biometric scanning device. And then you have a Samsung Galaxy ring. You can get one of those as well. It kind of works the same as a watch, like where you're talking into it. And you have non-invasive glucose monitoring, blood pressure via wearables, so you don't have to, like, have all these crazy devices. And then other medical grade sensors that are used in telehealth, so that the telehealth consultant, whether it's a doctor or a nurse practitioner or whomever the other person on the other end of that telehealth visit, is able to get that information from you to use in your consultation or in your medical appointment. So in the current state right now, what we're using these biometric wearable technologies is really for heart health, for stress, for sleep, chronic disease management like diabetes and infection detection. So we're able to use these devices to really help kind of pinpoint like what's going on with your body. So that's the wearables timeline as far as using your biometrics as a way to measure you or to identify you. Obviously, with all of the biometrics, there's some data gathering that's going on with that as well. So when we move into the next piece, we're going to be looking at DNA testing and data sharing. So, I did just mention data sharing, but DNA testing is something that just so like 23andMe was founded in 2006, but it really blew up I think in the late 2010s and like in 2020, 2021. Like I know a lot of people were out using that were, sending in their DNA result to get the results from, where am I from? What is my ancestry? So 23andMe is a company that offers ancestry, trait, and health reports of a saliva sample that you send into them. And a lot of people that like I said, that blew up, and a lot of people ended up sending their DNA into there. And I was like, I don't know that I'd want to send my DNA into that company. Like, I don't know what they're really doing with that. Um, and there was some theories that they were using that information for data sharing. So they're gathering all this data from you just based on your biometrics, whatever they can scan from that. So with that came privacy risks. So there's data breaches. About 7 million users experienced data breaches. Bankruptcy triggered data sales. I know that 23andMe recently was involved in I think there was a class action going on with them. But their bankruptcy triggered data sales, and then insufficient protections outside of the HIPAA. You have HIPAA rights of protection of privacy, and was it was founded that there was a little bit of inefficient protection around that their data was being used and shared when it shouldn't be. Your health information, your medical information is something that is considered privacy for you, and it's protected by the 14th Amendment. So that HIPAA violation is a serious one. And then there were some other things going on with the DNA testing. Potential buyers include pharma, so they're buying this information, pharma, insurance, AI companies, and that raised this fear of discrimination because now that they could see all of your data, your health, your medical information, now they can use that information to charge you a certain amount for your health insurance, to deny you any health insurance. And AI companies using this information, they're just like, oh, let's get all the data so that we can feed it into our AI program. So the current, in the transhumanist, in the transhumanism episode I did, or the podcast that I did, I was talking about longevity methods. So expanding the life cycle of a human from what it is now and to like a question mark or immortality or whatever. And so the wearables, they're continuously monitoring the heart. Um, they're continuously monitoring your O2 output. They're continuously monitoring your temperature. And it's great if you're like doing an athletic performance. It's great to have like these sleep studies to know how you're sleeping and see if there's any improvements that can be done. And so having those wearables does pose some, positive outcomes for that. However, I would be concerned about some of the negative risks that are associated with having those digital wearables on you at all times. You know, we don't know how that like our bodies are energy being we're energy beings, meaning we have a lot of electricity that goes on inside of our body, that's actively going on inside of our body. And so what I would like to know, if I was going to be wearing a wearable, which I don't think I'll ever do that. I have a phone, but you guys see me here often with my wired earbud in, because I don't want the wireless thing in my ear. And even if I do have a wireless thing in my ear, it's on one side, not on both sides. I wear one at a time because I just don't know, like, long term wearing these devices, what is the biological impact on having that device on you at all times. Hi, Mike. Welcome back. So we've got medical sensors. So Apple Watch can monitor your ECG, which is for atrial fibrillation. FDA approved apps for people that have PTSD and sleep issues that you can use to, monitor that stuff and monitor the heart rate, monitor you, and just kind of alert you and give information over that you can share with your doctor or your, medical provider. There's also non-invasive vitals that can be taken. So blood pressure can be taken without a cuff, which is an awesome, improvement in medical devices that we use. If you've ever, I'm sure you've gotten a cuff reading. It's not very pleasing to get one of those, but the non-invasive vitals, like where it's just a thing that you wear, is really nice. The smart rings, the Aura, OURA, and Samsung track advanced health metrics. So the military also uses these devices to see if they can monitor fatigue, or if they can monitor infections, or whatever other monitoring that the patient needs. There's these rings are very non-invasive ways to get that information and collect it. Because a lot of the times, let's be honest, like if your doctor's like, please track your heart rate, and you're like, oh, okay, so like how many of us are really following up with that, or even taking the medication that they prescribe as they prescribe it? I know a lot of people that just don't, that will start and stop, and it's just not a part of the normal everyday cycle. So having these technologies time and monitor it for them is really helpful. Now, we're going to kind of get into a weird spot, because now we're going to be looking at AI and how AI is looking at everything. So AI is very efficient. It looks at all the data, and it's able to predict things that might happen. So it could look at analyzing all of the data, and it could say, okay, here's the pieces that you need to look at, here's the markers, and here's the possible outcomes. And so it can help to identify early detection of diseases and any anomalies in the numbers. It can find that out. However, with AI, you've got to be really careful, because AI will hallucinate information. Meaning, AI will, if it is missing data, it'll kind of fill it in with a hallucination of what is the most likely thing to happen. So it's very average. I call AI average. It's not artificial intelligence, it's average intelligence, right? It's very basic bitch when it really comes down to like the information that it's going to be giving you. It takes all of the information over all of the keywords that you said, and it looks at it. It can compute it down really quickly, narrow it down. But if it's missing a data, it might just like, oh, okay, I'll just fill it in, right? It'll fill it in, and that's called an AI hallucination. So while that's helpful and may help the medical field, there also is this tendency for us to take the path least traveled, or to oversimplify things so that we can get more done. And, with your healthcare, I don't think that you necessarily want to have your medical team that's overlooking what you're going through to be like, oh, okay, well, that's a really fast way to answer it, and then we're just going to take charge in that way, in that direction. Next, I want to talk about the data. So the data that is being collected from you, which data breaches are serious situations because it's, gathering information about you, and it's a violation if that information is shared outside of what you've consented to share it to. So that's why HIPAA is such a valuable law. It's a health privacy act, right? So when the data is being taken in, let's just talk about if before breaches, what data are they taking? So in the health and biometric data, the usage is looking at chronic illness tracking, personalized wellness, and predictive care. Okay, so they're looking at how are we going to take care of this patient, and how are we tracking it. So we're getting all of that. Now the risks of that, like I said, is this over reliance without a doctor's oversight. So if you're using predictive AI to help put together, you know, a plan on getting the patient from whatever the chronic illness is to better, relying wholly on AI is a little dangerous because, like I said, it can hallucinate. So, and then the other thing that can happen if you're looking at the data and using that data and filtering it through AI, is that there are some potential misdiagnoses that can happen, and that could be potentially serious if you have a disease and then it's thinking that it's something else, because a lot of the time a lot of the illnesses kind of have these similar symptoms, and so it's like, oh, okay, there's a fair decent amount of accuracy, it could be this. And so with your health, you want somebody that can connect with you as a human to give you that positive information of, yeah, this is definitely what you have, or here's what I think it is, and here's how we're going to treat it, here's the prognosis, here's the plan on how to get from that to that. So with the data from genetic data, so any of your DNA that they're taking and you're sending it into, so you're consenting to it, and a lot of times we sign the terms and conditions. We don't look at, how are they using this data? Is it just going to be for me, or is it going to be shared with third parties? If there is shared with third parties, who are these third parties that it could be? And am I comfortable with that? Do I really want to consent to that? That's why you sign the forms. And so with the genetic data, the usage cases can be used for drug development. So that's not a terrible thing. Ancestry mapping, which is a great way to learn a lot more about yourself. When you ancestrally map where your family came from, it gives you a really good idea of, okay, I'm Irish, and the Irish went through these things, and this is the propensity of what somebody with Irish or Celtic descent might have happened in their lives, whether emotionally, mentally, psychologically, or even in medical terms. Somebody that has, like, for me being Native American, the chances of me getting diabetes is really, really high because it's just very common in that ancestral line. So health wise, I would be watching out for, how's my A1C, how's my blood sugar, how's my heart. Let me look at those things because the diabetes can affect all of those things. There's like 1 billion pages to read for terms and services. Well, the terms and conditions are there, and there's a billion pages because they have to give you all of the, like, in order for you to consent, you have to have all of the information there. And if they miss putting something in there, they could be held liable for that. So that's why there's a billion pages, is because they're looking at every angle they could be sued for and protecting themselves in that terms and conditions pamphlet or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So, ancestral research and family tree mapping is a great way. I always suggest ancestry.com is a great way to go in and start mapping your family out. Do it from an analog perspective. I mean, it's a little digital, but it still is a bit analog because all of that information was written down somewhere. And the Mormons were really, really good at collecting and keeping that data. Okay, and I think Ancestry.com is run by the Mormons. So that's where my mom did all of our family tree. We went back to the 1800s on my dad's side and the 1400s on my mom's side, and she was able to map all this stuff out. And she pulled a lot of like newspaper articles and stories and wrote down all of the information that would be valuable as far as somebody who cares about their ancestral lineage, somebody who cares about where did I come from, and really like what kind of DNA is mapped to me. Now, the risks of this are breaches. Like I said, data breaches can give you identity exposure into insurance companies and into, what else did I say? It was insurance companies that care about that. Pharmaceuticals care about that information. Um, and AI companies care about that information. They want all this information so they can put that into their. They have what are they called? Their mathematical equations that determine, yes, I'm going to give this person a health insurance policy, or no, or if I am going to give them a health insurance policy because they're Irish or because they're Native American, I'm going to give them um, a higher rated policy because I think that they're going to likely have diabetes, likely have heart conditions, which is going to raise the amount of care that we provide them. And so now their health insurance premium are going to go up, or their life insurance premium are going to go up, or maybe we're going to deny it. And so you come into that risk when you have these data breaches. This can also, not just insurance, but also employment discriminate you because, now that all these companies have all this information, they're like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to hire that person because of their medical risks or whatever. So you've got to be careful there. There's, not just employment, but it's like the employer could look at, a disability that they have, or they can have a medical situation that causes them to, need to be taken care of or more watchful. And so they could discriminate in thinking, oh, okay, well, I'm not gonna hire that person on because they're going to be unreliable because of this medical issue that I perceive as a problem. Okay, next, the other data that we're going to be covering, or that we're covering, is personal behavior data. And the usage for that is for tailored health recommendations. So with the personal behavior data, you can say, okay, based on that, let's have you start let's have you start that, and give you some really personalized health recommendations based on the data that you're providing. The other thing that it could be used for is that insurance risk scoring. So, like I was telling you, the insurance companies, they have formulas that they use to determine, you know, if and how much the insurance premiums are going to be, what kind of risks there are associated with that, and then price it at that pricing point based on the scores. So they do this with, you having a car. So if you're under the age of 25 and you have a car, they're going to look at that and say, okay, well, because you're a male and you're under 25, your insurance is going to be at this rate. Because you're a female and you're 40, your insurance is going to be this rate. So they look at that information and they're able to to isolate a risk score based on that number, and then they determine what your premiums are going to be. What are the payments that you're going to be paying? And then the next part of monitoring this personal behavior data is for marketing purposes. So they're going to want to market their information to you. So if you ever watch like a television show or even a YouTube, like maybe you're watching this on YouTube, and if I had ads turned on, they would be determining, okay, based on this person's behavior and what they're reading and what they're watching, um, they fall into this category, and so I'm going to send them this ad and this ad. I'm going to send them ads for Netflix. I'm going to send them ads for Wendy's. I'm going to send them ads and personalize it, because I can tell that they're in this age range from 40 to 50. They're in, they're into this kind of information, and based on that information, most of the people that watch it are from, age 27 to 45. And so based on that information, we're going to target the ads and market directly to them. You see this all the time on not just YouTube, but you see this all the time on Instagram if you're ever on it, and Facebook. It'll start targeting information, ad information to you based on all of the data that it's pulled. It's like, oh, okay, well, you're this age, you're connected with these people, you're liking these groups, you like this kind of entertainment, and so we're going to target you with that information. That's how they use your personal data to really personalize your experience online. So the risks of this is there's this loss of consent control, okay? There's terms and conditions because they need to have your consent. And then there's even a need to consent, to have consent, even if you don't consciously know that you're consenting, that they've given you the information and you've consented to it without even saying yes to it. You may not even know it. And then as a consumer, you might even be unaware of this, down the stream, the sales that happen because of that. Or even having that data information, they're able to take that data information and sell it to their marketing audience as advertisements. I was watching a movie with Nick Cage. It's a newer movie called Dream something. Let me see. I think it's on Max. I'm gonna just look it up. Sorry, I'm trailing off. It's Dream. It's right on the tip of my tongue. It's so funny. Dream Scenario. So Dream Scenario came out in 2023, and this is an odd movie. It was very weird to watch. It took me a minute to realize it was Nick Cage. But so the premise of the movie is, you have this kind of goofy doctor type. He's very much into his field of study, and that's all he really cares about. He doesn't care about anything else. He just cares about, I think it's even insects. I don't even know really what it was, but I could tell that he was a doctor, and he was teaching at a college, and that's all he did. He was just a professor. He never used his doctorate to expand and to, make a name for himself or do peer-reviewed studies or articles, or even he wanted to write a book, and that was his passion, and he never did that. So anyways, he's just this insect biologist, doctorate of insect biology, let's say. And the premise of the movie is he starts appearing in people's dreams. And so he appears in these people's dreams, and it's a whole phenomena. Everyone is just so fascinated with him, right? And the reason I bring this up is like everyone is so hyped by it. Like everybody's seeing this one guy in their dreams, just kind of chilling, hanging out. And one of the products that they end up that they end up creating out of this phenomena, knowing that one person can like be in everybody's dreams, just kind of chilling, hanging around, is they made these little wearable devices that could basically brand place items in people's dreams. So let's say we'll just use like a generic cola, for example, wanted to infiltrate the dream metaverse. And so they, I can't remember the name of the dream band company, but so they go to the dream band company and they're like, okay, we want to target this audience in their dreams, and you know, this is how much we'll pay for that service. Let's say it's $1 billion. We'll pay $1 billion for you to place Coke cans in people's dreams, since you guys have the technology to infiltrate them. Okay, so you never know with the personal behavior data that you have how that is affecting whomever is gathering that data and then their potential buyers of that data. Okay, so there's a little bit of consent control that goes into it. But if you go and you wear this device and you know that that's something that's going to happen, I don't know why people would want to wear a device that is, you know, brand targeting them with all kinds of whatever. But there's this consent that gets has to be like up front when you get it and you set the device up and you know attach it to the app, whatever app it's compared to. There's going to be a terms and conditions, and so in your own agency, it's in your best interest to read the terms and conditions. If you're going to take a vaccine, read the insert. If the insert's not available, don't take the vaccine until you've fully read and understand all of the materials that you're putting in your body. And that includes wearables. Understand, like, even with your phone, a lot of people don't even know it, but the phone emits a certain amount of radiation. And so if you go and look at your phone, whatever the phone you have, and you go look at the manual, there's going to be warning labels of, you know, there's this type of item in this phone. You know, keep it X number of inches or feet away from your body. You know, I think that there's even some radiation, but it really comes down to, are you going to have sovereignty over your body, conscious sovereignty over your body? And are you going to take action and try and figure out, okay, what materials are being used in the phone or in the iPad or in the devices that I have in my house? You know, what is the potential for that to cause harm? Let me go read the terms. Let me go read the manual. Let me go read the terms and conditions. Okay. Now, the next piece is the data covered in public sector use. So the usage in this is, you know, military infection monitoring and veteran health. That's, you know, a public sector use. But the risks and concerns of this is there's, you know, increased surveillance, like an invasion of privacy, surveillance, data centralization, and even kind of this mission creep, getting into some places that you don't want it to go necessarily. Okay, so that's why the data that is being collected on you, I mean, there's positive uses for it, of course, but we also have to look at what are the risks as well. And we're so programmed to see the risks and be just sound blind or nose blind to them, pretty much. Because we've seen so many pharmaceutical ads of like, this is designed to help me be the best, fill in the blank. Potential signs and symptoms are blah 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 blah. And we've made jokes about it, right? As just as a whole. So, from a spiritual and sovereignty lens, biodata is equal to spiritual biometrics in that your inner rhythms can be enlightening or they can be alienating if it's outsourced. So it's enlightening if you and your medical doctor are sharing this information and maybe there's an aha moment of, oh, this symptom that you've been having is caused from this, and then there's like this enlightenment or relief because now you don't have to worry about where's that coming from. But then if it's outsourced, if your data is not being shared just between you and your doctor, and now it's being shared between you, your doctor, and a whole insurance company or insurance companies, then it can be a little alienating because now they're going to say, well, you have this pre-existing condition. We're not going to give you insurance. You have this pre-existing condition. You no longer are employable in this whatever. And then data is often seen as a currency. So data is treated just like energy. It's a currency. So now your body is becoming this data mine of information feeding into systems that you don't particularly know where that information is going or can even see how it's being used. So it's mining this data off of you and then you don't even see where that energy is going. So you're being I said it earlier today. I was talking about Neo in the Matrix when he wakes up and he's got all these plugs and things pulled in and he's like having to get out of this goo cage and take all of these, these wires out of his body because that system was keeping him alive to pull that energy out of him. Because we are amazing and it pulls out the it pulls out from him and then it pulls out and it just shows like line after line, row after row of all these humans that are plugged into the matrix being fed off of that. And so they're living in the matrix metaverse, but in reality their physical body is just has all of these plugs in it because you're being energy mined. And data mining is included in that energy mine. And then again, this sovereignty piece of reading the terms and conditions and giving your consent over, there's this consent illusion because really, I probably read about 80 to 85% of the things that I say yes to terms and conditions. It's not everything. And I will tell you, I'm probably one of the only people that do that. Now, if it's a HIPAA thing, I've signed so many HIPAAs, I've read them. If it's, patient and privacy, like I've read those things. So those are things I'm not necessarily, I'll scan over it, but those are not necessarily things that I'm going to be looking into. But all of the devices I have I read all of the, all of the manual, all of the things? Like, yeah, probably not. Unless I needed to troubleshoot something, I'm probably not reading all of the manuals. Terms and conditions and things that like I'm like, oh, okay, I probably should read this. Yes, I am definitely reading that. But there's a lot of us that just agree to whatever the terms and conditions are that we never read. So in that, like I said, sometimes the simplest method is the method that we'll go through, but you're handing autonomy over when you do that. You're handing your autonomy over, you're handing that agency over to, and by saying you agree to it, they're assuming that you read all of the terms and conditions. So when the thing happens that you least expect, you're looking around like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that. And then they're like, oh, sorry, your claim is denied. That's an act of God. And that happens. People live in flood zones around here, and, you know, it's hard to get insurance for that because you're knowingly going into a flood zone, and they're like, since you're knowingly going into a flood zone, we're not, just know that we're unable. It's going to be very difficult for you to find anybody that's going to give you insurance. And if you do, it might be really, really high. It might be priced high because of the risk that is associated with being in that flood zone or being in a fire zone. That happened in California, in Southern California, or maybe all of California. You know, they often have droughts, and then they often have big fires. And then this year or last year, they had the huge, I think it was this year, the Palisades fire, right? And so there's this risk that there's going to be a Palisades fire. There's a risk that there's going to be a fire in Southern California. And, you know, people still live there. They still operate. But now the insurance, you don't know about how much it's going to cost. And so now the cost of insurance, in order to even, if you can even get fire insurance, is going to be questioned. Okay, so that's a little bit of the spiritual and sovereignty lens. And then I gotta pop off here really quick, but I have a couple more pieces of information. And we'll talk about some of the websites that I have here. Hold up the articles. So TLDR maybe, but wearables have evolved from just having pedometers to now having these medical grade trackers. The DNA services, they let us peer into the genetic code that we have, but it does have a possibility of opening a door for manipulation by data breaches, by sharing that data incorrectly, by violating the HIPAA standards. The AI-driven health is promising, but it might stride above the need of regulation behind it. So leaning completely into AI is kind of a dangerous thing. And then your body data fuels industry is not always aligned with your well-being. A lot of the times this is, you know, a money-making situation and not necessarily to promote your well-being. And then if you've been following the digital age, if you've been following the work that I've been doing here, you'll also know that the digital realm is, I mean, the Matrix battery pod that Neo wakes up in is probably the best way to describe it. You're plugged into all of these data points that you're being drained and you don't even know it. And that's why digital burnout is so real, is because you're plugged into all of these digital avenues and you can't even be really fully awake when you're plugged into all of these ports, when everything is pulling all this information out of you. And it's because our technology, our human body technology, is so amazing. The more that they learn about, the more that they develop technology, the more they learn about how impressive the human body is. You are valuable. Your human technology is top tier. Right now, they can't replicate it. And they're trying with the silicone-based life forms of AI, but they haven't gotten there yet. Your body is amazing. You're an amazing technology. In this, like, it's hard to imagine. Like, I'm in awe of how amazing it is, right? I really want to get into longevity. I don't have time tonight. I do have to pop off, but I wanted to come on and just get started on this. So let me see how my tomorrow is, and I'll pop um, a scheduled live in tomorrow at some point. But I hope that you guys got a lot out of this. This is just a fascinating, I mean, obviously I'm not giving any medical advice. And always seek your doctor for medical advice. But also, you know, be really conscious in and involved in what health advice you're getting. Ask questions. Make sure you read the forums. Be informed. You know, don't be in fear. There's no reason to be in fear, but being informed is going to help kind of stave that off a little bit. So, probably go into the medical stuff again, but we'll see. I have a few other topics that I want to cover as well, and I know that there's still like this merging with technology thing that I want to kind of get into, but I might wait until after I've covered. I want to do currency. I think I'm going to do a digital currency with um, somebody who's in the industry of, you know, banking and financial management, because I think that would be really helpful to have somebody on that I can really count as an expert in their field that will give the best information as far as like what are NFTs, what is, you know, these digital cryptocurrencies, how is that affecting our world, and then we can kind of go from there. And then there's some other places that I want to go to before I dive into the world of transhumanism, because I think I'm just gonna full on just go at that really hard. So, all right. Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, wonderful evening. I will see you on the other side. And I appreciate you. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And I will see you again soon. Thanks, Mike. Bye.